Everything distributed? Not yet. Okay, all right. What? Oh, yes. Yeah, where's the corkscrew? Anybody have a corkscrew? Good. All right. But you all have to wait for that one. Yeah, there's no more. We don't have any. We don't have two. We just have one. Uh, okay, so at this point, we're going to invite the head table to go and start there, since you're probably all going to kill me if I talk anymore. Head table, please proceed to the buffet, and then as we go down, we're going to do tables like this: first two, second two, third two, fourth two, like this, so that we don't walk over each other all night trying to serve each other food. So, head table, you're first, and then we start up here with these two tables. Okay? I think you can figure that out. So how many people enjoyed dinner? Was dinner any good? Dinner good? All right. Yeah. Let's see how many people thought dinner was good. Raise your hands. Yeah, me too. I thought it was great. Fantastic stuff. Thank you to Natalia and Hannibal's Catering for the dinner. Natalia has done a great job. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So thank you all for coming as usual. And I shouldn't say as usual because some of you haven't been here before. But we'll find out about that in a second here. We'd like to welcome our special speaker for the evening right now, Dr. Gary Hare over here. Yeah. So you'll hear his story in a bit and his relationship to Amiga, because he has one. And that's really a great deal. Is this coming through okay? Because we tested it in an empty room. And you know what that means. You know, it tests a lot better in an empty room. So there's all kinds of things that happen when people come into the room, especially people with wireless devices and things of that nature. You know, it's a wireless mic. Bad things can happen. But they haven't so far. Hopefully they won't. So it's really, again, great to see everybody here. And so really, you know, the reason why we do this is for you, the attendees, and because if you weren't here, we would be talking to an empty room, right? That would be kind of ridiculous. So, so we need to thank you first of all for coming, and so we're going to find out a little bit about you here. So, how many people have been here since the first show in 1998? If you have, raise your hands. High, so we can see them. Yeah, that's right. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and Bill Borsari I know has been, and Robert has been too. 6, 7. Okay, there's 7 of us. Okay, so let's dial forward through 5 years. So how many of you have been here for 21 years? Okay, raise your hands high. Okay, good. Yeah, we're doing this in a descending order. Okay, so let's yeah. So 5 years, 16 years. How many have been here for 16 years? Yeah. Okay. Hi, please, so we can see them. So 5 years from 16, I think, is 11. How many of you have been here for 11 years? Okay, good. A lot more. How many have been here for? Oh gosh, my math has failed me. 6 years. How many 6-year attendees here? Okay, very good. Yeah, it was a mental effort. How many are new this year? All right. Oh, fantastic. Look at that. Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. That's really, in fact, I think that's the largest proportion of first-time attenders that we've ever had. I know that we have some original Amiga team members here, at least one. So, yeah, exactly. Ron Nicholson is with us this evening. So thank you for coming, Ron. We really appreciate that. And then exhibitors. How many have been here since the first show? Except Bill. Bill's always been here. He's an exhibitor. So he's been here for 26 years. Okay, now let's see if I can do it again. 21 years. Exhibitors. No? Okay. And so 16 years. All right, there's one right there. And how about 11 years? Exhibitors. Okay, good. And how about 6 years? Exhibitors. No, just the last six. Yeah, 6 times. Okay. How many are new this year? Exhibitors. Anybody who paid for a table? Yeah. Okay. Very good. Very good. So you're the reason we do this, is so that we can indeed, not only promote Amiga, but find out what you've been doing, because, that's what the roots of our community are the users, the exhibitors, the individual developers. That's who we are as a community. We really appreciate your attendance here at AmiWest, and we hope that you'll all be back next year. Yeah, exactly. So we're going to recognize our sponsors right now. First of all, the Sacramento Amiga Computer Club, whose idea this was. And there are 2 original committee members here, I believe. And if you... So add to that John Zacharias, Cindy Aguiar, and the other guy, whose name I can't recall right now. Yeah. So there's, next we have our gold sponsors, our financial sponsors, Aeon Technology. Please stand, gentlemen. Please stand and be recognized. Both of you, yes, exactly. And Amiga on the Lake from New York. Do we have a rep there from there or not? No rep? Okay. But yes, it's fantastic. And then Cloanto Amiga Forever, the download code. Michael, stand up, please. Please stand up. Please stand up. Yeah, oh yeah. Okay, well, all right, yeah. This is him right here. Yeah, and that's not just to the basic edition either. That's the plus edition. It's a $30 download. So, or maybe more by now. It's the last time I looked at it. So, and then there's our raffle sponsors, who indeed have done a lot to support the raffle with prizes, and I don't know what else, because I have lost track of that. But we have our people here, Jerry Gray and his crew, who have not lost track. So they are Rabbit Hole Computing, Amiga Forever, AmiKit XE, Sordon, the cheap electronic shop, it says here, Amiga Store EU, Alinea Computer, and Retronic Design. And so thank you to all of our raffle sponsors, because they are an integral part of this effort. And those of you who will have more prizes drawn tomorrow will find out more about that. So thank you all for being our sponsors here. It's back when we first started the show 26 years ago, we actually charged $25 a head to get in. So now, because of our sponsors, we don't have to charge that. And you can come and do what you're doing. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So now we have our club awards, and we usually give out 2 awards, and there's going to be 1 additional award this evening. So they are named after former club members, and I'm going to start out with the Dan Klosko Award. Dan Klosko was a longtime club member who passed away in 2015, I believe it was, in December. So we honor him with this award. He was the creator and maintainer of the famous Abyss. Everybody's heard about the Abyss, which was a 1,000 square foot house that he owned, stacked to the ceiling with Amiga hardware and software. And it took us about 5 years to redistribute that whole thing. So it's finally gone, but and many of you have some of the things that were in there. So this is what the Dan Klosko Award is about. It's an organizational kind of award, a support award. For outstanding service to the Sacramento Amiga Computer Club and the Amiga community at large for 2023, is presented to a man who has dedicated his efforts to the success of the Amiga community, both near and far, over a period of many years. Much more could be said about this. These are only bullet points. If you say, well, what about this and what about that over there? Well, we can trust you to fill in the blanks. He is an Amiga fan from way back. He has given of his time and expertise to push Amiga forward in many ways. He is in the forefront of Amiga development on many platforms. He's enthusiastic about the future of Amiga, actively participating in software development and preservation efforts, making it possible to run Amiga everywhere. He has supported AmiWest by donating free download codes for his superb Amiga Forever environment for many years, as well as attending the show in person, bringing encouragement with him. The Dan Klosko Award for 2023 for outstanding service to the Sacramento Amiga Computer Club, AmiWest, and the Amiga community at large is presented to Michael Badalona. John Zacharias is another one of our awards. John Zacharias was involved with Commodore Computer Clubs and the Amiga Computer Club here in Sacramento since the early 80s. He was president of the Sacramento Commodore Computer Club, SC3, for a good long time. We've discovered this out of the historic newsletters that we have, listing him as president of the club. And then when the Amiga Club started, he went with the Amiga Club and soon after became its president for a good many years. He also was the one who came up with it was an idea that was around at the time of having a show. He had gone to Bob Sharp's show in St. Louis, Missouri a couple of times and said, we ought to do that here, and came back and organized this show in 1998. So he was a programmer for the state of California and really enjoyed the Amiga because of its open quality as far as programming resources were concerned. So that was his particular fascination with Amiga, was the programming side of things. He did a very large email program called AE-Mail, and some of us still use that. But he was tragically taken from us in the early 2000s. Indeed, that's how I inherited AmiWest, was a call from a hospital bed saying, I can't make it this year, what about you? So that's where I took over in 2001 doing this. So we honor John today for the award is for outstanding technical assistance to the Sacramento Amiga Computer Club and the Amiga community at large. For 2023 is presented this year to one who is largely responsible for the technology we see and celebrate here at AmiWest. He's an original Amiga fan from the beginning, using his creative insight to build an Amiga for the very first time. He worked too many long hours to give to all of us a machine that did what none other had done before. He has since given of his time and resources to keep on promoting Amiga throughout planet Earth. Today, he continues to support and give of his energy, creativity, and life to those who continue what he and the other original Amiga team members have begun. He's enthusiastic about the future of Amiga and actively participates in Amiga events near and far. And every time we boot up an Amiga, we are all thankful that the Amiga responds to us instead of us responding to the Amiga, all because of the intuition interface that he invented. the John Zacharias Award for 2023 for Outstanding Technical Achievement for the Sacramento Amiga Computer Club, AmiWest, and the Amiga community at large is presented to R.J. Michael. Now, RJ was supposed to be in attendance today. We have not heard from him. We currently have a call into him right now just to, see what his status is. We don't know why. We're hoping that he's okay. I think all of our thoughts and prayers are with him wherever he is. But that certainly doesn't diminish the amount of the award. I know it's one of the reasons why I still use an Amiga is that intuition interface. So thank you, RJ. We really appreciate it. So in the life of any organization, including a show and a club like this, there's growth that occurs. Oftentimes the growth that occurs requires and necessitates the involvement of other people. So as that has happened here at the show, other people have become involved. And last year when I took very ill, in fact seriously ill, 4 men stepped up and really stepped into the gap and did the show for me. I shouldn't say for me, but for all of us. So at this point, I really am feeling like they have done such a great job that at least I want to make this an orderly transition of leadership. So this year's President's Award goes to 4 individuals. The President's AmiWest Team Award for 2023 recognizes a transition in the leadership of the AmiWest show. The leadership baton is officially passed to a team of outstanding professional project managers who have already proven their skill and talent at continuing the history of innovation that AmiWest represents. They are named in alphabetical order. Bill Borsari of AmiWest broadcast fame has been with AmiWest since the first show in 1998. He continues to produce the AmiWest broadcast, be our online operations officer, and give major creative input into the structure of and participants in the AmiWest show. Brian Carpignano is our finance man and Banquet backup contact. He is also a beta tester for AmigaOS 3.2 and 3.3, in addition to his professional work for another IT company. Jerry Gray is our on-site operations officer and problem solver, in addition to giving major creative input into AmiWest organization and operations. He runs the hotel contract and the game competition, producing the custom prizes that winners receive. He also leads the raffle along with Bill Borsari. Chris Nelson, aka Mr. Toast, is our on-site technician, social media officer, and recording secretary for planning meetings. His experience in the IT field is brought to bear in ways too numerous to mention for our benefit. So, as you've noticed, I've named 4 individuals who have really taken on expanded roles and have grown those expanded roles exponentially. And we've seen that in the last couple of years. As with all volunteer organizations, these talented men give freely of their time and talent to advance the cause of Amiga into the future. They represent the future of AmiWest. I applaud what AmiWest has already become and will continue to be under their leadership. Please give them your continuing loyalty and support. Now that doesn't mean I'm going to disappear, because I won't. I'm kind of big and large, so it's hard for me to do that. But I would ask all of you to come to the front and receive your certificates and celebrate that transition in our leadership. So Bill, Jerry, Chris, and Brian, please come forward. Okay.
Microphone too. So the technical term for this is ambush, because he didn't tell us he was going to do this.
No.
He's not going anywhere. We know where he lives. So we will drag him back here every year, even if we have to push.
No. Well, no, it's not a disappearing act. It's a teamwork act, and all of you guys have so much more information and contacts than I ever did, and I really thank you for using all that to our benefit and our mutual benefit. So again, thank you very much, especially for last year stepping up when I was so ill. But as going forward, we'll definitely be talking about next year's show soon. So that brings us to our speaker for the evening, who's probably wondering why we do all this. But yeah, exactly. So Dr. Gary Hare has been here before as a speaker when he was CEO of KMOS right in the early years of the 2000s. And we heard him speak at that point about the future plans for Amiga. And so at this point, the little bit of information that I have on him is he has a distinguished history in media strategy and innovation, along with a short time as the CEO of Amiga Inc. And we, without further ado, like to welcome Gary to the podium to share his thoughts with us.
It's always scary when the speaker has notes, right? So, first of all, I'm pretty much convinced that Bill and Trevor asked me to join you this evening simply to test my memory. Because I know when I get home, my wife's going to say, "How did it go?" And when I walked in this afternoon, 4 of you came up to me and said, "Oh, I remember we were here last time." And Bill told me that was 20 years ago. And so I'm going to tell my wife, these guys have really good memories. Because I don't remember being here last time, So if I repeat myself, don't remind me of that. And Trevor tried right before I came up here to ask me if I maybe should have, a shot or two of whiskey prior to speaking, and I turned that down. And so if this doesn't go well, remind me that was a mistake, and I should have taken him up on this. I did a little research just to remind myself, and so I started with my resume, which none of you have ever seen. In fact, other than when I was offered a position at the university, no one's ever asked for it in the last 30 years. But I do have a thing on Amiga on my resume. I think the dates are right, and the title's right. And here's what I wrote. This is all that's there. Don't ask for the resume. It says, an unsuccessful attempt at relaunching this iconic brand. And that, I think, was my contribution to the 2 years I was there. Now, other stuff happened, and I'll tell you about some of that stuff, but in reality, it was an unsuccessful attempt. So what was the attempt? Why did I start it? Was it a good idea? All that kind of stuff. I was asked to come to a university about 15 years ago. I retired, sort of, 2 years ago. And they were starting a new doctoral program in media psychology. So it gave me an opportunity to be whimsical. You go, you want to mess around with VR, you can do whatever you want to do. It was a pretty cool job. The media psychology program was relatively small, largest doctoral programs go. This university had one of the largest clinical psychology programs in the country, one of the largest in the world. And I still hear from students from that clinical program, one just as recently as 7 weeks ago. She wrote me a note and said, I'm $240,000 in debt. And the best job I was qualified for was with a VA hospital in West Virginia, making $54,000 a year. Do you have any idea what I could do? What should I do? And I said, well, first of all, move out of West Virginia. But second of all, it's pretty tough to have a corporate job that pays you less than 6 figures, particularly if you're in California, New York, parts of Texas. And this corporate job thing I think is interesting. And I look back on my life, I work with most of the large tech companies, I think, one time or another. And there are two that I really, really liked, and I do not hesitate to say that these were good, honest, innovative companies, and you could trust what they said. One of them was Philips, and some of you know I was CEO of Philips Media in Europe for a while, as a founding CEO. They gave me a card table and a telephone on the top floor of a building in London and said, go build this company, would you? And I sat around there and ordered biscuits, you know, and tea for a couple days, and then I looked at my telephone and thought, maybe I should call somebody. And I called everyone I knew. And to make a long story short, over the next 15 months, we had design studios in 8 countries and distribution in 11. But I knew at Philips that if I went to the CEO and said, I need this or I need that, I would get it. And the other one was Intel. When Intel started their division that was designed to make new content for new platforms, they went out and they would say, they would look at something you did and say, we like what you did, could you do something that's kind of like that, but in this category? They would fund it, they wouldn't ask questions. We designed, in the early days of the internet, the first virtual museums in the world. If you've been to the Van Gogh Museum, the interactive Van Gogh, that was us. That was my company. And with the Van Gogh Museum, it's fascinating because we had a situation where we could do whatever we wanted with one of the most famous painters on one of the most famous sites in the world. So what did we do? We did a virtual tour on dial-up internet. And you could choose one of 3 people to take you through. You could get, you know, the curator, nice black suit, black tie, you know, all that kind of stuff. You could get Van Gogh himself in his own words. You could get a hippy-dippy art student, which most people want to do that part. And we did 2 really innovative things. When I first saw the innovative things, when my designers came up and showed them to me, I said, I don't think we can do that, can we? They took 2 of Van Gogh's most famous paintings. Remember the Blue Room painting? You know, that one with furniture and all that. We turned it into 3D. You could walk into the Blue Room painting and you could walk around the furniture, you could do all that kind of stuff. And we did really cool things that Van Gogh people absolutely hated. You could move the furniture. I didn't know, you know, that furniture was that sensitive to this issue. There's a lot of things you can do innovative when you're in a big company. They have a lot of resources. They don't necessarily have any idea about what you're doing. So that really was my suggestion at that time. And then a venture capital firm came to me and said, would you be at all interested in trying to help us relaunch an asset that we own? And that asset turned out to be Amiga. And at the time, I accepted another position. Remember in the early days of the internet, you always had tried to define and describe a new media with an analogy of one stone. And no one knew what the internet was going to be. So everybody said, and Microsoft was really behind a lot of this, it's going to be channels. It's going to be kind of like television, certainly like cable. It's going to be channels. And they hired a friend of mine, Brandon Tartikoff, who was the president of NBC, to run that. And Brandon came to me and said, we're going to have 12 channels. And I said, good for you. And he said, we'd like you to run 4 of them. I said, I'd like it better if you asked me to run like 2 of them. And so we went back and forth. And we're pretty close, you know, we're pretty close. It's a long negotiation and what have you. And then one day, Brandon was 44 years old and he died of brain aneurysm. Just got out of bed one morning, his wife went in to find out what's going on, he was just laying on the floor dead. And so, I had time. I had the luxury of time when this VC came to me. And so I knew I had that. And I said, I'll think about this, but I'm going to go talk to some people. So I got on the plane, I went to Seattle, I talked to some folks up there. I went to the UK and I talked to some folks up there. I talked to a good friend of mine that's an investment banker and said, what do you think? And as I talked to people, I liked some of the people that were at the Amiga. I liked the enthusiasm of all of you around the world. But what I really liked when I met people like Ray and like Lacey and like Vince and like some of those other folks that many of you probably know, these were people that were not only committed to that platform, but it put a lot of blood and treasure into it. Most of them had worked without any compensation at all for over a year. Some longer than that. So I really liked what they were doing. I looked at that and I said, well, maybe I should do this. And every single person that I know, every single close friend I have in technology, told me not to. Not because they had nothing bad about Amiga. They just didn't think it was a good opportunity, good financial opportunity. And they knew my personality. And you guys don't know my personality, but I'm very easy to get along with much of the time. But, so I looked at this, and I tried to figure out what strategy one would try to deploy to relaunch something like this. My art director, my longtime art director, had an Amiga in her studio. I'm not sure what she did with it, but I know there was an Amiga there. And so I wasn't unfamiliar with it. I was very familiar with the early days of Atari and stuff, you know. Trevor told me I should tell you this story about Melvin Bushnell. Somebody's recording this, and I'm sure I get sued if I actually tell this story. So I'm not going to do that part. But I was involved in the design and production of Ball Laser. And Ball Laser was a big deal, yeah. And so when we knew we needed contact with Amiga, so I went to Lucas Games and said, you know, license this to me. And we were negotiating that right up to the very end, and I'll get to the very end of this. So my role that I negotiated was, I will hire the people, I will help create the products, we will set up distribution, but I will not raise money. You're the venture capital company, and I've got an idea of how much money we need to get through the first 2 years. And so if this amount of money is on hand, then count me in. So I took about 3 months closer to 4 to finally make this decision. And finally, I joined. I think I had joined just briefly when I was here last time. I don't think I've been around for very long. And as it turns out, there wasn't any money. There wasn't $1 million or $3 million or $5 million. There wasn't $1. There was no money. No money. I talked to a good friend of mine who's a business development guy. I said, well, would you join me if I have to raise money to do this? And he said, well, let's go talk to some people. So because of Felicie and people like that, the strategy initially was that we were going to be in the hardware business, a business that I know nothing about. But it seemed to make sense. I know a lot of you felt we should have been. We used to be. So relaunch what we used to be. I talked to Greg, another guy that worked with me at the time. About 2 weeks ago, I ran into him and I said, I gotta go talk to this Amiga thing. And so like, how many VCs and investment banks and strategic people did we talk to? And he said, I think it was 36. 36. And for the most part, people would look at us, they knew the Commodore story, they knew what's happening in the hardware market, they knew the hardware market was big guys, the Sonys, the Schusters, the Microsofts of the world, and they just went, number one, you can't relaunch hardware for $5 million. And number two, we're not interested. But then I got a problem. So I asked the company for a stock ledger. I said, well, if we're going to try and raise money, we've got to make sure that it's clean, right? So let's start. How many people will stock, what their name is, and how many shares. Sometimes what they need. That's all it is. So I got the stock ledger. It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. But I noticed a curious thing on the stock ledger. One of the people on there, seemingly an individual investor, owned a large number of preferred shares. I don't know how many of you try to raise money, but no investor is going to come in and put money in as somebody's got preferred shares, putting them in the first place in case you go bankrupt or merge or a reverse split or anything like that. So I flew to Europe and I met with this person. And it was supposed to be a short dinner. It's a nice little place in Germany. see you around. I'm going back to services. And then I was told, it's done for about easily, within about 90 days. Don't worry about it, taken care of. So I was fine with that. My philosophy of life is just to trust people that you work with until there's some reason not to. And almost all the time, if you trust somebody, there is no reason not to. They trust you back. We finally brought in a little bit of money, about 15% of what the agreed amount was supposed to be. So when I saw that, I asked for another stock ledger. What's the change? And it's a really weird thing. I don't remember the exact amount was paid per share. Over $2, let's say $2.50 a share. And now we've got listed some Amiga employees. People have been around a long time. They're advocates, they're dedicated, they're enthusiasts, they're just like you guys, except they didn't work without, hopefully you get paid for what you do. They didn't work without competition for a long, long time. And the employees, the founder stock, you know, I don't have any founder stock. The last time I had founder stock, the price was 1/10 of a thousandth of a cent per share. I think I had 1.5 million shares in stock, and I had to give $138 to pay for that. It turned out to be not worth the entire $138, but that's an entire The employee's founder stock was priced at the same price as the investor that was brought in. The same price as the investor that was brought in. They used their employees to increase the valuation
of their company.
I never heard anything like this. I've heard a lot of bad stuff. I've never heard anything like this. And I said, that's the first thing I plan to fix. And I did. The investors started to get interested when we changed our pitch and our focus. Let's remember when we were at that time, okay? Early days of mobile. Not a lot of smartphones out there. But mobile had this vision, not only people being able to talk on the phone, but maybe be able to do some other stuff. And some of that other stuff was games. There weren't very many good mobile games. In fact, you could count them on probably one hand at that time. Maybe one hand. It's been run over by a lawnmower at that time. But there weren't very many good ones out there. But there were a couple. But we could go into a VC or a strategic partner and show them something they'd never seen before. We could take a Nokia phone and run software on it, on the Amiga operating system. And then we could take a different phone and run the same software without rewriting a line of code. It was truly a write once solution to a world that didn't even know they needed to write at all. But a couple looked at that and said, this is really promising. And one very strategic partner looked at that and said, we're interested. So now I knew we were onto something. There were some glitches along the way, but there was interest. So we had a situation where we knew that if we played this correctly, we would be able to get the investor from a strategic partner that would help us with distribution.
As some of you probably heard the phrase, you got to kiss a lot of frogs. Some of those frogs live in Silicon Valley. I kissed most of them and dated a couple. And it didn't work out as well as you might hope. There was no prince that I could find down there. But now I have a term sheet. The first time I have a term sheet. 2 years in, I've got a term sheet for the amount of money that we need. And so I asked for an updated, accurate stock ledger. And I guess I got one. And I saw this stock ledger. I walked out of the office in New York. I called my attorney in California. And I said, Doug, I have, and he was very familiar with the previous two stock ledgers. And I said, I've just got this stock ledger. It's completely different from anything we've ever seen.
And he said, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm in New York." He said, "All right. Drive to the airport and fly back to San Francisco. Meet me at 7:30 tomorrow morning. I'll have your letter of resignation ready to fax." I was a CEO. I mean, I should have known about these things, right? I mean, you could say you should have known that, and you would be right. I should have known. But once I knew what was happening here, you cannot stay. You cannot stay. I mean, the ethical principles are staggering. The financial repercussions of having knowledge of something like this and staying to make it continue would be staggering. And so I resigned. I left. And I didn't think about it much anymore. There's some things I should have asked. Many things probably I should have asked along the way. And I don't know the answer to this, by the way. It's a question you might ask, and then I tell you then I don't know the answer, so I'll just tell you now. How did a venture capital company get control of a company and its assets without an exchange of value? I don't know. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you get the assets of a company, any company of almost any size, without $1 exchanging hands, exchanging value. I don't know. I can guess. Trevor guessed in his book. but I honestly don't know how you pull that off. What was this thing called KMOS? It didn't exist when I started. KMOS stands for Curry-McEwen Operating System. I had questions. I'd seen this happen in a couple of other technologies where founders controlled one asset, a pivotal asset, in this case an operating system, and then they want to lease it back to the company so that they have two channels of revenue out of the same product line. My position was pretty simple. I don't care what you call it. I called it chaos, but that was just me. But that asset stays in the company. And not only that, I'd like you to meet my attorney, who came with me from California to make sure that these things were done properly. And then finally, how did some of the investors, the existing investors, get shares? Now, I can't tell you this is specifically what happens, but this is often what happens. Let's say you're a venture capital company, you've got 3 companies. One of them's pretty hot, one of them's kind of warm, one of them's neither. Let's say Amiga's the kind of warm. And you got some investors that come in and say, I'd like to buy 10,000 shares of the pretty hot. And you go, cool, we'll sell that to you if you buy 5,000 shares of the kind of warm. So all of a sudden you have an investor base that you didn't have before, that you'd never heard of before. And that's oftentimes what happens. And it's a situation that is very, very difficult for management to deal with. You don't know where your investor people are coming from. And particularly if you don't have investors and you're not a public company, you want to know that. You want to know that for sure. So looking back, what would I have done differently? I guess the simple answer was, I would have said no. And now that I know that I can't relaunch it anyway, it's very simple, I should have said no. But the other thing I think I would have probably done differently is that I would have focused only on strategic investors, strategic partners. The cost of distribution is so high these days, and even worse in those days because of all the currency kinds of stuff in the EU. You could lose, when I lived in London for a couple of years, one day just for fun, because I traveled daily, I put $100 in cash in this pocket. And I got on my plane in London and I flew where I was going. And then when you work for a big company and all you do is fly around, so there were days when I would have breakfast in Eindhoven, lunch outside of Paris, and then dinner in Spain. And that's not even an exaggeration. When you live in the UK, you have to prove that you were out of the country for 50 days plus one in order to get a tax return. And I asked my assistant, would you go through and look at my calendar? Have I been out of the country 50 days plus one? And she came in a couple days later laughing, and she said, the good news is you were out of the country far more than that. The bad news is, over the last 15 months, nowhere in the world, including your own home, have you been for more than 4 days in a row. I didn't leave Phillips because I didn't like it. I left Phillips because of my wife's health, and I simply couldn't be on an airplane every day. But it was a situation where you looked at what was going on, and I should have known that it had to be strategic and not wasted over a year of my time talking to VCs. And you know, you talk to people that got out of Stanford Business School last Tuesday, and they would say things to you like, one guy, I remember this is a true story. We were at a meeting with Kleiner Perkins, and I knew the Kleiner, and then we've got these people, and I got this young guy back here, and he says, I have 5 marketing questions. And I said, cool. What's the first one? And he asked me his first question. And I said, all 5 of your questions from Jim Makin's introductory course on marketing at Stanford Business School, are they all that 5? Because if so, I can just answer them all at the same time. And then I turned to Kleiner and I said, how long do I have to stay before I get the free lunch? Because you guys are not going to invest in this company. But you have to know how to spend your time, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't do a very good job of that for the first 6 or 8 months. I was focused all over the place. Anybody with a checkbook, I'd take a meeting with you. And that was probably not the best way to go. The second thing was I should have doubled down on mobile. And what we did, we were talking to the usual suspects. We were talking to the Motorola's, we were talking to the Nokias, but we weren't talking to the new suspects. And we were out there banging the bushes for strategic partners at exactly the same moment that Apple was finishing the design on the iPhone. And I had done business with Apple. They saved my company accidentally. Remember when Apple, the technology companies, but particularly Apple, had evangelists? Well, one of their evangelists came to my office one day. We had just had the #1 selling title in the world on some platform. Came to my office one day and said, we're launching a new computer, and we need a product to send with it that shows off what it can do. I said, what's the new computer? And they said, well, I got one here. It's a little box thing, you know. It was the Apple II. And we need something cool. And he showed me what it could do, and I said, it doesn't do anything cool, you know. And so they said, well, if you could just do something for it that's kind of cool, you know, we'll pay for it. I said, how many units can you sell? They said, well, there aren't any out there. And I said, okay, then what kind of unit guarantee are you going to give me? They said, well, I'll tell you what, the marketing people want to bundle it with the computer, so there's something for people to do. So we did a golf game. We took their style guide and threw it away, like we always do with style guides. I don't let anybody who works for me read style guides. They deliver them, we throw them away. If they're really big, we'd recycle them. And so Apple came in and they said, we'll pay for it. I forget what the production budget was. And we will guarantee 25,000 units at $12 a unit. And that will be guaranteed profit for you. And so we said, well, right, you know. So we did it. They were out selling Apple IIs. And so one day Apple called my attorney and they said, we have a problem. And Doug said, what's your problem? They said, the marketing people didn't get the memo only to ship 25,000 units. They shipped some more than that. And Doug said, how many more? And they said, well, they shipped 86,000 units. And Doug said, and what's the problem? They said, well, we only had $12 a unit for 25,000 units, and so we don't quite know what to do about the rest. And Doug said, well, I have a little calculator here. Why don't we take 86,000 and multiply times 12, and you send me a check for the balance? Which they did, you know, which they did. And we were at a little company, we're on a milestone basis, and, you know, every day is a tough day, and all of a sudden you go, yay, Apple saved us, good for Apple. I gave them all the money back for iPhones over the years, however. So one of the things I did and we were just about ready to roll, is that Ball Blazer, for those of you that know the title, is a sexy title. It was the #1 game on the Atari platform on whoever ranked stuff like that for a long, long time. Somebody told me it was the #1 game just 5 years ago. I don't know. And they just put it in the Tech Museum in San Jose. But a bunch of other old Atari stuff. And, you know, so I thought, well, that might be a cool title. So I went to Lucas Games and I said, I'm working on this Amiga thing. We're going to try to relaunch it. It's going to be on mobile. You guys are not doing mobile. I'd like to license Ball Blazer for mobile. And Howard Rothman, the attorney, said, well, yeah, sure. Which happened about 2 weeks before I saw that final stock ledger and resigned. So I think we're moving in the right direction. I get asked to speak every once in a while. I was telling Trevor, I don't get to ask to speak anymore about virtual reality and things like that. I was at a big virtual reality conference by the company that was touting virtual reality. You probably know them. They're fairly well known worldwide. Their second name is Book. First name is a body part. Oh yeah, Facebook. And so they asked me to come and talk about AR, VR, XR, all those other Rs. And so I was at a conference and everybody was working for the same company on the panel I was on except for me. And I said that how I'd been spending my time on VR was going around and trying to convince small software developers not to risk their money on this platform. It didn't go over as well as you might think. But people say all the time, this reminds me of that. Digital media reminds me of the early days of interactive media. And it's just not true. The early days of interactive media, the publisher took the risk. Almost always. You may not get your title published, but if you did, somebody else took the financial risk. I know, I was a publisher. My first budget when I was running Philips was $42 million. And I was the only person that worked there when they gave me the $42 million. I shouldn't have hired all those other people. It would have gone much better for me personally. But we were ready to take that risk. And so was Microsoft, and so was EA, and so were lots of other people. That's not true today. So at this little talk, I said, you know, one person said, how do I know? How do I know when I should produce for a platform? And I said, if you can sell into 3% of the installed base and break even, it's not a bad bet. If there's no installed base, somebody else better be guaranteeing the risk. That's what I wanted to do in those early days of Amiga Mobile. I wanted us to take that risk. I wanted to be a publisher. And I had another publisher that was willing to come in, lock, stock, and barrel. So I think there's some things that could have been done if I would have been smarter, and if I would have been earlier, and if I would have been more focused. What I like about what all of you do, to sustain interest in anything for as long as many of you have, is unusual. It's unusual. It's not just a skill, it's a mental talent. That you're that committed to something, you're that into something, you can spend that amount of mental energy on something and sustain it over time. I like that about the people I met, most of the people I met that worked at Amiga. I knew those people were all in. All I needed to do is get together the resources to support it, maybe a little bit of leadership, and hire a whole bunch of more people. It's not that hard. If you hire good people, you've got the resources to support them, you're clear about where you hope you're going, and you launch stuff on time. That, for me, is the software business. Not an easy business, but it's not rocket science. My son tells me, my son works for NASA, he's constantly telling me that nothing I've ever done is rocket science. And I keep telling him these crappy little games paid your way through Stanford, you ungrateful kid. Trevor wanted me to tell you more stories about my background, but I don't think it's really necessary. I started Fathom Pictures by accident. I was at the University of Washington. It was my first academic gig, and I wanted to get out of there desperately. I didn't realize how good I had it. It was the golden days of graduate education. My full teaching load was 4 courses a year. You know, I remember I had a really tough day one of the terms because I had to teach 2 courses on a Tuesday. I didn't do anything in the other 6 days of the week, but 2 courses, man, you know, it could wear you out over time. I mean, these things were 50 minutes long. You're talking about, you know, and so I didn't realize how good I had it, but I wanted to come back to California. I wanted to get involved in more innovative kind of stuff. So what I did is I told people in Northern California that I produced computer-controlled movies. And they all went, well, that's really cool. And then I told people in LA that I produced computer-controlled movies. Obviously, I have to live up near Silicon Valley where all the smart computer people are. And they all went, well, that's really great, you know, that's terrific. And no one believed me, no one had any idea what computer-controlled movies were, including me. And so it did not go as well as you had hoped. But one day, the president of Lucasfilm called and said, are you the guy that does the computer-controlled movies? And I go, I'm your guy. And he said, we started Lucas Games Group 18 months ago. And what they did is they hired all of the people at NYIT's technology program, moved all of those academics to Marin County. They were all in sound, and then they wondered why they didn't have a product after 2 years. And so he said, do you think you could, like, get a product out, you know? And I said, absolutely, not a problem. And what I learned is that with enough butcher paper and different color markers and enough time, and oftentimes some stimulants, you could design stuff. You know, you could design stuff. And so we did. We designed Escape from Cyber City, the first interactive, hand-painted cell animation title ever made. When we won every animation award on the planet. I'll tell you, if you want to get treated really well, do something that's animated, and then go to France. And they have carpets they lay out for you and pick you up in really small cars and stuff, and you know, and give you prizes. And you know, so that was a big deal, and we turned that into a coin-op game. It was the first Laserdisc game ever made. And so we decided to test it at the bar that was down below our office. So here we've got, we didn't call it Escape from Cyber City, we called it something. It was an anime title out of Japan, and we designed it and had the animation done at Toei Animation in Japan. So we decided to test it downstairs. And so we put it down there, you know, and we said, well, we should go down and check it out. And the guy that owned the bar called and said, get this thing out of here. And you go, why? He says, it's broken. I said, how can it be broken? You only have it for a day. And he said, just get it out of here. I don't want to hear it anymore. Everybody's complaining. So we went downstairs, you know, and there was a tragic flaw. The coin box was full. Totally full. The average coin drop in those days in an arcade for a hit game was about $115 a week. We were doing $300 a day in quarters. Now, we did have a problem. You couldn't make Laserdisc last very long, but that's a whole different story. But when we did that, and then we moved that over to platforms, it was a huge hit. So my little teeny company had the #1 and #2 best-selling titles in the world. On the CDI platform, you go, well, that wasn't a very big platform. Well, we sold 460,000 units of Palm Spring Open, and more than that, of Ball Blazer. I did ask the question, how is it that we sold more units in software than there are hardware installed in the entire world? How did this possibly happen? They said, oh, that's because we packaged one for free and then gave people a coupon to buy another one for 20% off. I said, people did that? He goes, about 150,000 of them, yeah, did that. So I've lost a tremendous respect for the consumer but I think it provides an opportunity for a lot of us here. What am I doing now? A couple of people asked that. I'm doing two things, really. I got involved in environmental technology about 6 years ago. And we were very involved in, those of you who live in California, there's a proposal, not a proposal now, it's becoming a real thing, of putting solar panels over the California aqueduct. If you do that, and we're doing it now, there's a demonstration project down in Tulare County, what it would do is if we put solar panels over the 340 miles, the flatter part of the aqueduct, you generate about 40 to 45% of the total electricity demand of the entire state of California 5 years out. You save between 60 and 80 billion gallons of water a year because of the fact that it's covered and there's no evaporation. You would decrease the temperature of the water by 2.5 to 3 degrees, cutting down allergy and decreasing maintenance costs by $50 million. And there are no land use issues. The land's already being used as a canal. You don't have to go out and do this and do that. So we were very involved in that. We're very happy that it's happening now. And if you're interested afterwards, and after Trevor and I've had a chance to drink the whiskey, I'll tell you the story about how that happened. And then I turned my attention more recently to air-to-water technologies. A friend of mine's brother is the head of Navajo Nation. I don't know how many of you ever spent any time at Navajo land, Hopi land. So aside from trying to kill all the indigenous people, kill their food sources and stuff like that. When we realized we couldn't kill all of them, we said, well, we'll just move you to some land. It'll take a little while because we have to figure out where the absolute worst land in the entire United States is. And once we've determined that, that's where we'll put you. And that's what Navajo Nation looks like. And they have no water. None. The water that they have in these little teeny communities is brought in by truck. So we started researching 15 months ago air-to-water technologies. We come up with about 13 or 14. There's one that's extraordinary. And if you have a little time this evening or tomorrow or whatever, and you want to look at something that's absolutely amazing, look at Source, S-O-U-R-C-E, source.co. And you will see all of their technologies. You will see all of the installations they're doing around the world. So here's how it works. It looks kind of like a solar panel, heavier, thicker. And if you live in an area with 15% humidity, it will generate about 2.5 gallons of water a day. But they just released their new panel called the R3, which is 30% more efficient than the R2 was. So I ran a graph. I went back 20 years. I went back to 1 week after I was here last time. I went back 20 years, and I said, where has solar gone in terms of efficiency over the last 20 years? And I ran that graph. Then I ran the first 3 years of Source. And if they stay on the same trajectory, 10 years or 15 years from now, your kids and mine are going to be drinking water that they pull out of the air. And they're going to be drinking it at a very low cost. And what I'm excited about this is the first thing I've done in my life, I think, where I might be able to save a life. Maybe a couple. So it's a good way to spend my time. And there's another thing that I've got in the back of my mind. I've tried it 3 different times. I cannot make this happen. I love games, but they're very, very, very specific. And I think that auto sports is the most lucrative category of gaming in the world. Only because there's so many things you can do with it. So I've tried, man. I'm kissing auto sports frogs like crazy. I've tried and tried and tried to find a company that really wants to do something innovative in the auto sports category. This is the moment where I'm sad that I left Philips. Because I know I could walk into Jan Timmer's office and say, I want to focus on auto sports, I need $50 million. And he said, get out of my office and come back when you've done it. And you just don't find that very often. Thank you so much for inviting me this evening. And if you have any questions or comments, I'll be very honest. If I don't know the answer to something, I'll freely tell you. Any questions or comments or anything like that? So do I. No. Oh, okay. So, anybody? Great. once again, thank you guys. Keep doing what you're doing. Yes.
One question. First of all, thank you for contributing to the book. You provide a lot of really useful information, information I'd never heard before, and I think most people in this room have not heard before. I think you said in the book that, and you freely admitted that it was a failure at Amiga, but that but you really enjoyed the experience or the community. And I think you said that it reminded you of a community that that supports veteran cars or whatever. I think you said classic cars. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, everybody has a weakness, and mine is buying, restoring, and crashing classic Porsches. Buying is expensive, restoring is more so, crashing really runs your bank account. So I'll tell you a story. Are we recording all this? Okay, I'm going to deny this story if it comes out. So we're racing Porsches at Laguna Seca. We had track time and all that kind of stuff. And this friend of mine mine was just a nice older one that was kind of nice. It wasn't tricked out or anything. It was just a car, A friend of mine had one totally tricked out, expensive as can be. And he would say things when you do time triangle. He'd say, how do you go 1 second faster this time on the track than he did last time? He said, oh, that's about $5,000. So you put $5,000 in new stuff in your car, you can gain about a second. How many seconds did you gain? And he said, I don't know, 10 or 12. They're going, holy smoke. So we're racing, and they have a pit there. When you're just out there, you don't stop at the pit. He pulled into the pit, and the pit has a safety curb. They all do. And the safety curb is to keep you from going out of the pit and running into somebody who's coming down the track. He hit the safety curb in the middle of a 911R. Turbo car, and rolled the underside of that car as if you're opening a can of tuna. We felt that it's possible that Farmers Insurance wasn't going to cover this. So, we did the logical thing. We got a flatbed truck and a lift, and we drove outside about 20 miles, and we found a place on the roadway that had one of those curb things they set up, And so we drove one of the other cars toward this curb and hit the brakes, so we had a lot of skid marks, and laid this sucker right over there. And other than the deductible, the insurance company covered it, and everybody was happy. So there's more than one way. And that, a technology cult and a car cult are pretty darn similar, right? You guys spend money in silly ways. I know, I walked over there. So that you can make your machine go 1 second faster. I had the same addiction.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's have another hand for Dr. Gary Hare. I mean, this is fantastic stuff. Now, anything else I could say would be totally anticlimactic, so I'll try to avoid that. So thank you, Gary, and thank you for all of you who have come this evening. I understand it as the usual after party, whatever that is and wherever it is. I've heard about it, but I have no details. So you'll have to, figure out that on your own. I'm sure you're capable. So thank you for coming to the banquet. We hope to see you all tomorrow morning for the rest of the show. And thank you very much for coming.
Hold on, we have We have parting gifts for everyone. Everyone gets to pick up a chair and take it outside and leave it with the rest of the chairs outside. No, seriously, we need a little help because we got to convert this back into the show floor. So we'll do that with the other festivities,
Yes.
the alcohols
yes.
and whatnot.
Lubricated by the festivities.
Testing 1, 2. Ooh, I'm hot. I'm really, really, really hot. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and shut down the stream. Gary's presentation was fantastic. Really, really, really enjoyed that. Let me get some video going on me here. Oh, I dropped my water. Okay. And cut. Okay, so it's the end of AmiWest 2023 Banquet. We are going to partake in other stuff right now. Reset the show floor. You might have noticed that there's a bunch of round tables. It's going to go back to how it was before, which is great. Oh, we're going to need all those chairs back. Whoops. Yeah, I'm going to shut this down, and we are going to rock and roll. Have a good night. Oh, let me thank the sponsors again. So So again, thanks to all the sponsors. We had an amazing time. It was amazing. We can't do the show without the sponsors, both financially, the equipment, and the moral support is amazing. Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.